Worldcom Incorporated executives Scott D. Sullivan and David F. Myers were charged with 7 counts of securities fraud.
Worldcom, a telecom giant destroyed by a massive accounting fraud. At the heart of the fraud, Controller David Myers, a former Ernst and Young senior manager.
Mr. Myers was a reluctant participant in the events that have led us here today.
If you're not careful, things could turn out the wrong way.
He looked like a regular guy. If it could happen to him, it could happen to you.
What led Myers to participate in the fraud? And what can we learn about doing the right thing from his example? Find out in this special ethics and compliance presentation.
Recently, Jeff Hoops, our America's Ethics and Compliance Officer, sat down with David Myers to speak with him about his role in the WorldCom fraud.
Hello, I'm Jeff Hoops, America's Ethics and Compliance Officer. Here's an excerpt from my interview in which Myers describes a conversation he had with CFO Scott Sullivan about the financial results.
In the third or fourth quarter of 1999, I personally brought financial statements in to Scott and showed him a margin that was, in Scott's words, completely unacceptable. And his exact words were that we had completely, well, these aren't his exact words, that we had screwed up, that we had made a mistake, and to take the financial statements, he wasn't even going to keep them, they were wrong. So, I knew they weren't, but I didn't, at that point in time, didn't know enough facts about it to be able to tell him that he was wrong, so I took the financial statements back. We reworked the entire quarter and came back to basically the same number. So when I took those back to Scott, again, his response was, this is so far off where we had told the public market we're going to be, we can't do this. There must be a mistake. There has to be a mistake. Scott's probably the brightest person I've ever met in my life. From a financial perspective or almost any perspective. And when someone that you respect from an intelligence perspective, I mean, there's obviously a lot of loyalty and everything else. When he says that he knows for a fact that the information that you're providing is wrong, that you've made a mistake, you assume, or I assumed that we had made a mistake. And so we went back and reworked the numbers again, coming back to, for all intents and purposes, the same number. All of this time frame, we're a public company. Public company is about to release its quarterly earnings, and so the time frame to release your earnings is set. The time that we're at this point trying to figure out what's wrong, is we're creeping closer and closer to the time we have to release our earnings. So Scott actually tells me, I know the numbers are wrong, I know what they should be, we need to book an entry to get where I know we should be, and then we'll figure out what the error is at the end of the quarter, and the next quarter is going to be just the same error, but the opposite direction. The two will wipe out each other, and everything will be fine. But you need to produce an entry this quarter to fix the problem that I know is there, and that was the real pressure that the accounting department was put under, was producing an entry that was based on the CFO's thought process of what he thought the number should be, as opposed to what we knew the underlying answer was.
The expected turnaround in the numbers never happened. The problem was not the accounting, it was WorldCom's weakening business. In our next excerpt, Myers described what happens 2 quarters later when he realized that there was no accounting mistake and that the first reserve release was now a real problem.
The third quarter, it had happened twice. The first one, I honestly believed that we had made a mistake. I didn't know how, but Scott convinced me that there was just an error. The second was, well, we now think we know what the error is, and we're going to try to fix it. So we're going to make the adjustment twice. Not comfortable doing it, but again, we're not doing anything that is considered criminal or fraudulent. It's just not good accounting, and we could probably be called to task, and we should have disclosed, been more open in our disclosure. The third quarter, when there really was, in my opinion, nothing in the future that was going to change what the situation was, and we were still fixing it. We were preparing at that point in time. In my opinion, it had sort of moved past being aggressive accounting into this is wrong. And then the entire pressures that come about you is at what point in this linear, equation was I really wrong? So this is the third time I'm going to do this. Is it the first time that it's wrong? Or this is the first time that I did it 2 quarters ago? Was that wrong? And so all of a sudden you've stepped off onto a slope that you're halfway down the mountain and you didn't even know that you're on the mountain. So then it was sort of a survival. What do we do? Well, you got to sort of keep doing what you're doing, or you got to raise the flag that there's something, completely amiss, and then what are the consequences of that? I mean, it was a moral and ethical dilemma that you were facing, and nothing had prepared you to deal with the kind of pressures that you were currently under.